Okay, we're working with Blender 2.76b, and we're going to do a very simple little composite demonstration. So I'm going to start by going over to the camera. Actually, just for the sake of better viewing, better screen real estate, I'm going to get rid of the transform menu on the left-hand side. N for the right-hand side, T for the left-hand side. We'll get rid of both of those. So what we've got is just a box here. If I render this, go to the camera and click render, you can see there's really not a whole lot happening here. We could add something in there if we wanted to produce a shadow, but we'll do that in a few minutes. First thing we want to do is we want to go to the world button, and you can see there is no world at this point. We'll click on the texture button, we'll click new, and let's just assign a world. We'll take clouds, that'll be fine. And you can see that that is world. The world is showing up here, and we're assigning a texture to that world. If we render this, if we go back to the camera view and render this, you can see that we've got, we should have a world, but we don't quite yet. So let's see if we can figure out why. So back to the material button. Again, the world is being influenced by the texture, and there is the texture. It is in fact, it does in fact have a texture sign, but it's not displaying. If we click on world, we can see that it's just gray, which is what we saw in the basic render. Let's click both. So on the left side, we're seeing the texture, which does exist, but for some reason it's not actually being influenced in the final render. What we'll do, or what we need to do, is go down and check horizon under influence. And once we do that, you can see that this pinkish color shows up here. And if we were to render this, let's go back to camera, click render, you can see we've got that, that pink color, which is showing up properly, although it's not what we're looking for at this point. What we'll do is go back, and instead of checking clouds, let's go to image or movie. And once again, we got a problem. There is no image, so the left side is black, and the right side is going back to the default gray. So we'll fix that by clicking open. We're going to go to D drive, or sorry, media drive, photos. I've got a picture here, hopefully, temp, and table scaled. So I've scaled this to match the frame size, which is 1080p, which is 1920 wide by 1080 pixels high. There's the picture on the left, and there's how it actually looks, or how it would be rendered at this point. Let's go to camera and do a quick render just to make sure. And yeah, it is working. The only problem is it's zoomed in a lot more than I would like. So we can fix that fairly easily. All we do, I'm just going to move that so we can actually see the mapping here. And I'm going to adjust the X to 1.8. I think that should about do it. Better do the same thing to the Y side. And that's looking a little bit better. I might have to bump that up to 2. I'm not sure. You can do some experimenting to see what you need to do. We'll go back to camera. We're going to render again. And you know what? That's looking pretty good. Now the box looks really out of place. And there's a number of reasons for that. The first of which is shadows. The second is lighting. You can see that we need some light on this side, obviously. Everything's fairly evenly lit with some fairly soft shadows. So we want to try and simulate that as best we can. The other thing too that we'd like to see is the shadow influence just on the table, not anywhere else. So let's start by adding a light. I'll go to top view, Shift A, we'll add a lamp, and we're going to make it a spotlight. Go to side view. Oh, better lift that up a little bit. G key for grab, R for rotate, and I want the center of that lamp to go roughly through the center of the object. 7 takes us to top view on the number pad. I don't need to rotate much, maybe about there. And we'll go back to camera, we'll render, and oh, that's coming along nicely. Not bad at all, but we still need to see that shadow. The problem is Blender doesn't know that table exists. The only way to make that happen is to go Shift A and add a table. Well, actually, we're going to add a mesh. We'll make it a plane. We'll scale it up a fair bit. But you can see a problem here in that the primitive that we've added is a square, but we actually need a rectangle. We can fix that by going Scale or S key, and we'll hit X. So we're only going to scale it in the X dimension. I'll grab that, make sure from side view that it's underneath the our primitive shape. That should about do it there. And we'll render once again. We're going to see a couple of problems. Actually, I got kind of lucky. It's fairly close to the table here. I wasn't expecting that. Let's go back to top view. And let's scale it so it's definitely too small. And we'll render it. So we should see that table. You can see our angle isn't perfect here. So we want to try and fix this again. And what I'll do is rotate it slightly. And we'll scale it up a little bit. We'll render again. And this is going to take a little bit of trial and error. Yeah, you can see we're actually getting fairly close here. If I really want to get this thing precise, it's going to take a little bit of tweaking. We'll render again. And it's just going to take multiple renders until we get it close. You know, I'm going to say that's close enough. I'm not really happy with how the spotlight is producing this shadow. So I think what I'll do is just simply lift it up higher. Oops, escape that. Select the lamp, lift the lamp up quite a bit higher so we light most of the table up. And that's a little bit better, although this shadow is way too harsh. We can fix that, and the easiest way to fix that is simply get rid of the other lamp. I'll just click X, and if we render, we're getting close, except for now we clearly need some light over here on this side. So yeah, let's put a light back in there. We'll go back. Actually, I'll just hit Control Z. Should be able to undo that. And what I'm going to do is go to the light button, and let's just drop that energy down to maybe 0.4. I don't know, I'm just guessing here. And we'll render that, back to camera view, render, or F12. And you know what, that's not bad. The shadow's a little harsh here, but that's okay for now. The problem that we're seeing here, though, clearly, is that we've got a very strong shadow over here, and that is going to need to get fixed. A number of ways we could do that. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into edit mode, use the B key, and I'm going to just move this in a little bit like that. Tab, let's render that, see how we're doing. That's not bad, actually. Yep, that works pretty well. Okay, the next thing we need to do, though, is we need to make sure that this table doesn't actually display itself, but does show the shadows. So to do that, it's not that complicated at all. We need to assign a material, and that material is going to have some special characteristics to it. We click New, and rather than the default gray, what we actually want it to do is display only shadows. So we click the shadow button, and there's a button down here that says shadows only. And as soon as we do that, with any luck, if I click the right button here, camera and render, we should see basically what we're looking for, where we've got a shadow over here, and well, you can hardly see the shadow on the right. That light needs to be made a little stronger, and we should be able to get this thing looking pretty good. If this were a ball bouncing, as the ball actually moved up and down, that shadow would move with it, because it's actually projecting the shadow onto a plane, which only displays shadows. And so there we go. That's the basics of compositing.